It's time to start improving my analysis videos one step at a time. Starting with this one, it's time to analyze Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2010.
Hi everyone, as always Patrick here. If you're already subscribed, make sure you turn on notifications, otherwise YouTube won't tell you if I posted anything. If you are new to the channel, make sure you watch until the very end and consider subscribing if you like it.
Okay, Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2010. Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2010 is a racing game developed by Criterion Games with some small help from DICE and was published by Electronic Arts, obviously in 2010. It is the 16th overall game in the Need for Speed franchise. It is a throwback to the original Need for Speed 3 Hot Pursuit from 1998 and Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2 from 2002. Criterion's Hot Pursuit returns to the roots of the Need for Speed franchise by having players drive sports cars and exotics as a racer or a cop in beautiful environments taking place in a region called Seacrest County, which is inspired by places found in the west coast of the United States. The game is also noted for the introduction of Need for Speed's asynchronous, I think that's how you pronounce it, I'm not sure, multiplayer system and the autolog where players can compare their best times in events against their friends. As always, let's start this analysis video by talking about the graphics. The game is now 13 years old, but despite that, graphically, the game still looks beautiful. The game runs on the Chameleon engine developed by Criterion Games. This engine gives the game a very unique look, something that couldn't be found in other racing games at that time, except for maybe Blur and Split Second, but I will compare the graphics of this game to other games later. The Chameleon engine is missing some important graphical features like anti-aliasing and anisotropic filtering, but I will give it a pass since the engine is a spectacle. For me, Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2010 is the third best graphically looking racing game of 2010. Yep, it's time to compare the graphics of Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2010 to other racing games released in 2010. So let's do it. In 2010 we had games like Craze, Speed Dreams, Need for Speed World, WRC FIA World Rally Championship, aka WRC 2010, Crash Time for the Syndicate, Rally Poland, Four-Wheel Drive Trophy Murmansk Vladivostok 2, and Supra Torque. 2010 also saw the release of Split Second and Blur. Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2010 definitely looks better than most games I've mentioned, but it cannot compete graphically with Split Second and Blur. Still, that doesn't change the fact that Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2010 is an amazing looking game. It still looks amazing 13 years later. As I've mentioned before, the Chameleon engine is missing some graphical features, and Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2010 really shows it. Like I've said before, there's no anti-aliasing and no anisotropic filtering. The game does support widescreen resolutions, it even supports multi-monitor setup, ultra widescreen and even 4K, which is all well and good. But there are problems. The V-Sync is forced on and it cannot be turned off, and the and there are some other problems like, the obvious one, there's no FOV slider. Thankfully, there is a workaround for this. You can use the Racer S camera hack. This can easily tweak this. You can also get NFS 11 cam hack 103 or NFS 11 cam hack 10A if the former doesn't work. Unfortunately, those don't work with the latest patch. But there is another big problem. The frame rate is capped at 60 FPS, and I didn't find any workaround for this. I'm pretty sure there is one, but I just couldn't find it. Maybe I wasn't looking well enough. What about the game's stability? Well, the stability is pretty mediocre. The same thing goes for the optimization, especially when you're playing on a low-end PC. Since I have a pretty strong PC, the game didn't crash, it didn't stutter, and it didn't lag. But if you are playing this game on a low-end PC, the game will crash, it will stutter, and it definitely will lag. A lot. In other words, the PC release is mediocre. A lot of stuff works, but a lot of stuff is missing. Okay, it's time to talk about the story. The Hot Pursuit games are not known for their story. In fact, most Hot Pursuit games don't have a story at all. Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2010 is an exception to this rule, because this game actually has a story. And this is the kind of story you can totally ignore. Everything you need to know about the game's story is told to you in the opening cutscene. The crime rate in Seacrest County has reached its all-time high. The cops are trying everything they can to stop this, meanwhile the racers just want to annoy the cops. After this cutscene you get to choose, do you want to be a racer or do you want to be a cop? Well, in the end, it doesn't even matter because your choice doesn't affect the story at all and you can always switch sides if you really want to. This is the main reason why the story in this game is not important at all and you can totally ignore it. And that is something I'm going to do. I'm going to completely stop talking about the story now and I'm going to talk about the gameplay. Like I've said at the beginning of the video, this game returns to the real roots of the franchise. Grand touring in supercars on freeways instead of the street racing and customization that a lot of people think about. What does this have to do with anything? Well, in this game, pretty much everything. In this game you are dealing with racing in closed tracks, you are using supercars as I've said earlier, you have police chases, you can't customize your vehicles, more about that later, and you are also racing in rural/exotic environments. Sorry for that stutter there. Let's quickly talk about those closed tracks. 80% of the time you will be racing on long straights, 15% of the time you will be racing on tracks that have some sort of sharp turns, and 5% of the time those tracks have some sort of spirals. Most of the time the game combines all of those track styles, but there are a lot of races and chases where you have to race on those very specific track styles. What about the supercars? Most of them feel the same thanks to the simplistic handling and physics of the game. The main difference between every car in the game is the top speed. As for braking, handbraking and turning, this is where things get interesting. Braking is not effective since the game wants you to handbrake a lot, I mean, you won't really use the brakes a lot to begin with, but I really don't like the fact that the brakes are so ineffective. Like, you might as well remove them from the game because I swear you will almost never use them. As for hand braking, well, this is the game that introduced the brake to drift formula. When you press the spacebar, in my case at least, you start drifting, and then you hold down the gas key, and then you use the left or the right arrow key, in my case, to control your drifting. I have to say, drifting in this game is very smooth. You will almost never crash while you're drifting, and the drifting itself is smooth and very easy to control. That's very good. There are some problems with it, but I will talk about every single problem this game has later in the video. Turning is also interesting, because this game introduced the brake to drift formula. Turning normally is not effective, but turning while drifting or by hand braking is very effective. Like I've said before, this game encourages you to drift. Since it's very smooth, it's easy to control, and you also get rewards for doing this. You can easily fill up your nitro meter by drifting. And since you get a lot of nitro by doing this, it is recommended to drift a lot in this game. Also, the tracks are designed in a way so that you can drift a lot. I know this doesn't really make sense, but I can't really explain it in a better way. All I'm trying to say is the driving model is very fitting to the environment. The game also has lots of great cars to drive. Some manufacturers that are rarely / has never featured in Need for Speed games are present here, such as Alfa Romeo, Maserati, Carbon Motors, and so on. Cop cars are also great, Lamborghinis in particular. There are other great cars to drive if you have the DLC add-ons for this game. What about the car customization? There is no customization in Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2010, and that's okay. You don't need to customize your car in every single Need for Speed game. Or, well, more specifically, you don't need to have customization options in every Need for Speed game. As a matter of fact, older Hot Pursuit games didn't have customization. So, yeah. What about those rural and exotic environments that the Need for Speed Hot Pursuit sub-series is known for? Well, they are rural and exotic, alright. There's not much I can say about them really. It sure feels like you're playing a Need for Speed Hot Pursuit game. Oh yeah, and those environments look great too. Can't forget about that. Let's talk about some other great qualities of the game. This game has an awesome soundtrack, such as Edge of the Earth by 30 Seconds to Mars, Watercolor by Pendulum, and Stronger by Lazy featuring Dead by April. Pursuit scores are also amazing. The game also has the iconic Lamborghini Diablo SV from Need for Speed Free Hot Pursuit. Well, if you have the Lamborghini Untamed DLC, that is. Both racers and cops can use their own weapons now. Spikes and EMP are available for both sides. There are also jammer and turbo boosts, which gives your car a radical boost, exclusively for racers, and roadblock and roadblocks and helicopters exclusively for cops. These weapons are very fun to use and need some strategy to use, making the game very exciting. The game also has many great events. It has even more great events in multiplayer. Some of those events include races, duels, and hot pursuits for racers, and for cops you have takedowns, more takedowns, and hot pursuits. Yeah, racers definitely have more variety than cops. You've probably noticed that I've been praising this game a lot now. Well, this is about to change because now it's time to talk about the bad qualities of the game. Being a Criterion-made racing game, this game inevitably has a part of burnout blood in it. For example, the typical break to drift, or drifting on rails or whatever you want to call it, mechanics from the Burnout franchise are introduced in this game, and those mechanics are never gone. At least those mechanics are well executed here, but not the following games. Also, the pace-destroying and annoying crash cameras are also introduced in this game, and those cameras weren't even slightly improved at all until Need for Speed Payback of all games. Not to mention the rubber band system is even worse than the one from Black Box's games, although it's still better here than in Need for Speed's Underground. Another problem: all single player events are heavily scripted. You will easily be able to learn every single behavior of all AI cops and racers, and you will also get the hang of it really easily. This decreases the replay value. Another problem: the DLC items are rather overpriced and console exclusive. The SCPD Rebels Pack content, which is also a console exclusive DLC, is finished in the main game and, like the previous titles, can be found in PC files. You can use them by modding. Again, on this DLC. Also, this DLC contains only some coupe versions of some racer cars that are already in the main game. The cash grab is strong with this one. The damage model is somewhat broken in this game. You will barely take any damage while crashing head on, but you will take severe damage from the back. Also, no matter how much your basic HP is, spikes and EMP always take out a fixed percentage of your HP bar, which is very weird, if you ask me. There are also some problems with the game world. As beautiful as Seacrest County is, it's not a true open world. Free Drive is a single player only experience with nothing to do apart from just driving around. You don't get to start events within the game world, like in Burnout Paradise for example, or get into police chases. At least 3 years after the game released, Rivals got the idea to give players a true open world with its Redview County. And the final problem with the game: some of the events are rather frustrating and or unfair at times, especially some hot pursuit chases. In conclusion, Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2010 is undeniably one of the best Need for Speed games released in 2010s. Between these years, the franchise suffered from constant changes of studios and themes, which resulted to some poor quality games. One of the best examples is Need for Speed Rivals, which is a very poor remake of this very game. Obviously, this game can't compete with the Underground games, Most Wanted and Carbon, but it's still a good game. Now it's time for the most important question. Do I recommend this game after all those years? Yes, but only if you like those hot pursuit styled games. If you don't like this style of game and you would rather play something like Underground, Most Wanted or Carbon, or you simply prefer those styles, then I would strongly recommend playing Underground, Most Wanted and Carbon instead.
But that pretty much sums up everything I wanted to say in this analysis video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Just be